Good afternoon, everybody. Phil Simons here with Columbia Grain and your post-January supply and demand USDA data dump. Well, the cat's definitely out of the bag, and really there were a few curveballs that we want to talk about in the monthly USDA supply and demand report that was released this morning. So let's go ahead and dive right into the numbers, and I'm going to share my screen with you again here. So let's go ahead and take a look and navigate to our favorite website, columbiagrain.com. And we're going to navigate to the upper right-hand corner to the Producer Solutions tab. And again, that is where we house all of our information that is pertinent to the markets and what may be moving the markets on any given day. Let's go ahead and look under the latest USDA charts. Right in the middle, we see the January USDA supply and demand report. Now, there are definitely a lot of numbers to go over here. So let's go ahead and get right into it. I'm going to magnify it a little bit to make it a little bit easier for you to see. But every month, the USDA does release the supply and demand numbers, and today was the day to start the new year. And we can see that we're going to start with the 22-23 U.S. grain ending stocks right at the top of the page here. On the left, you can see that the January numbers for corn came in at 1.242 billion bushels overall for U.S. ending stocks, which would actually represent a 10% reduction from the numbers that we had last year. Following suit, soybeans, they actually came in this month at 210 million bushels for U.S. ending stocks, which would actually be a pretty big drop in comparison to where we were last year, and actually about a 23% reduction from the U.S. ending stocks that we had last year. Next up, looking at wheat, 567 million bushels for overall U.S. ending stocks for the January report. And again, in comparison to where we were last year, numbers were down actually 15%. So again, definitely a reduction in the U.S. Ending stocks from the 22-23 crop year. But then when we take a look at where some of the other curveballs came in was the U.S. production from 22-23. You can actually see here, if we take a look at corn, the January numbers came in for production at actually 13.7 billion bushels, which when we compare that to last year was actually down 9%, or actually close to 200 million bushels. So a pretty big, pretty sizable drop there in all relative values standpoint. And actually, when you take a look at the yield, we actually did increase the yield from where the average estimates were. It was really more of a change or adjustment in actual harvested acres for corn, which was definitely a little bit of a surprise there. And then next up, if you take a look at soybeans, January production, we have 4.2 billion bushels. Again, a drop from where we were last year, down by about 4%. The other aspect that we were looking at this morning on the numbers was the USDA, the December 1st grain stocks. You can see corn was coming in at 11.6 billion bushels versus last year, which was right in line with where we were last year, but definitely ahead of what the average estimate was coming in at pre-report. Beans were coming in at 3.1 billion, same kind of scenario where we were last year, and similarly with wheat. The other thing that we're going to skip over the winter wheat seedings just for a minute here, but if we take a look at the USDA, the 22-23 world crop production, taking a look at Brazil and Argentina, primarily looking at soybeans, really on the January numbers for Brazil, the production came in at 153 million metric tons, which in just direct opposite effect of what we were seeing in the U.S., they're actually up about 20% from where they were last year. And last year's numbers were at 127 million metric tons. So almost the polar opposite of what we were seeing in the U.S. here as what we saw or what we're seeing in Brazil. Argentina, similarly, a little bit better where we were last year with a 4% increase coming in at 45.5 million metric tons. But then when we take a look at the bulk, the world ending stocks overall, we see that corn and world ending stocks came in at 296 million metric tons. Again, when we compare that to last year, we're down by about 3% in comparison to last year's numbers. Soybeans actually came in at 103 million metric tons, which was actually an 8% increase from the numbers that we saw last year. And wheat, and similarly with corn, was down about 3% and came in at 268 million metric tons. So a little bit of a mixed bag, quite honestly, with the numbers and how they're trying to balance out the U.S. versus the world and how everything really fits together in that regard. The other important thing that we saw this morning was the winter wheat seedings for 23-24, and actually had a little bit of a surprise here as well, with all winter wheat acreage coming in at 37 million acres. When we take a look and compare that to the numbers that we saw last year, the all winter wheat was at 33.3 million acres. So today the numbers are actually up 11% in terms of seeded acreage from where we were last year. And when we break it down by class even further, we see that hard red winter wheat today was showing 25.3 million acres, which would be up by about 10% from the numbers that we saw last year. The big increase from a percentage standpoint anyway was the soft red winter wheat. I had a 20% increase from the number that we saw last year, and soft white wheat as well came in at 3.7 million acres, which is up close to about 3% from the numbers that we saw last year as well. So again, kind of a mixed bag, and the markets definitely had a reaction. Really, when we take a look at when the dust settled here, soybeans actually finished the day up about 25 cents on old crop and up 10 cents on new crop. When we look at corn, corn closed the day on old crop up about 15 cents and new crop up about 6. When we look at the wheat classes, we see that old crop Chicago was up about 2. We see Kansas City old crop was up 10 to 12 cents. Minneapolis was up 10 to 15 cents in the old crop positions. But then when we take a look at new crop, Chicago wheat was up about 2 cents on the close. New crop Kansas was up about 10 to 12 cents. And then Minneapolis was up about 3 cents. So again, just kind of a mixed bag in terms of the overall direction as far as what we saw. You could build a case really that we really just had more of a balancing act than anything else. But again, when we take a look at the overall U.S. stocks, I'm going to continue to share my screen with you here, and we can see where the U.S. ending stocks and how they compared today versus the recent history. So again, starting on the left-hand side of the screen, when we look at specifically U.S. ending stocks for soybeans, the number came in at 210 million bushels today. You can see how that relates in comparison to the recent history, where last year we were at 274 million bushels, and the year before that 257. But the year before that we were at 525 million bushels. So again, kind of puts it into perspective a little bit more there. In similar fashion with wheat, for U.S. ending stocks for wheat, we can definitely see that we're starting to see this downward trend develop here, and we see 567 million bushels for overall U.S. ending stocks in wheat. In same fashion with corn, kind of plateaued for the most part when we look at U.S. ending stocks on the bulk numbers anyway. So really, kind of looking at the overall trends that we've been seeing and how to really structure the marketing plans going forward, especially when we continue to look at new crop soybeans. New crop soybeans are just really sticking out like a sore thumb to me, at least. Really, when we look at the cash price for new crop soybeans, we're still right around 1330, maybe 1350 in a lot of locations for cash contracts. Hedge to rise, we're creeping up on $14 for new crop as well. So definitely take a look at those, look at the accumulator contracts, and see how we can customize or help customize some of your marketing plans for new crop. At least get your orders out there and working, because again, we're definitely seeing the volatility that we saw last year start again this year. So remember to get a hold of your local Columbia Grain merchandiser and get your orders out there and working. And remember, the first 5 letters of broker spell broke. Have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll talk with you next week.